Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn, aka Mental MacGyver. I provide concierge high performance support and coaching to executives, founders, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Brandon Mahoney. He's the co-founder of LaunchPoint Labs, a national venture firm where he is an expert in creating sales departments. He is known as Dr. Startup. I have Inga Hebdon. She is a leadership and impact coach, helping people increase their impact, their ability to lead, and their influence, and act strategically. I have Karen Loomis. She is the founder of No Moss Brands. She has 20 years as a marketing and branding professional and is an adjunct professor at Grand Canyon University. She is passionate about social change. The question today, how do you handle discussing what you do without feeling pretentious? Brandon, this was your question. Would you like to start us off?
Yes, absolutely. So a really dear friend of mine recently moved to Portland, Oregon, where I live, and they came here to start a new job, and they've been attending these meetup events where everyone gets together to get to know each other. They're all new to the area. And they asked me, how do you handle talking about your job? Because every time I do, I feel like I'm being pretentious. I feel like I'm bragging, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable talking to people about what I do for work. And I realized I feel the same way about when I talk about what I do for work. I help people launch businesses, but I myself feel weird saying, oh, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. And so I struggle to find a way to get past that outside of just ignoring it. But I'm wondering, is there a better way of having those conversations with people without feeling like you're just bragging about yourself?
Karen, you've been a business owner a long time. Talk to us.
I put this in the category of learning to toot your own horn. And I always thought it was women that weren't really that good at it because we've always been instructed to tone it down. Nobody needs to hear about all that, right? So I always thought this was kind of more of a woman issue. And I would say it's probably taking a good portion of my adult working world to become okay with bragging. Why not? Elon Musk has no problem bragging. So why is it not good for us to brag about what we do if it's factual? I mean, like to me, as long as it's factual and you're not putting somebody down while doing it, which is hard to do in marketing, I must say, go for it, in my opinion.
And it's funny because I encourage the people I work with to do that, to be proud of what they do and brag about what they do. It's almost the feeling like you're not the expert, even though you are.
Imposter syndrome.
The imposter syndrome. I feel like it's like that at times.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I agree with Karen. Kind of, I thought, well, that's maybe just a women thing, but I think there's also a cultural element in there. So I'm from Germany, and we, as a nation, I'm generalizing, of course, but as a nation, would brag less about ourselves, whether that's in a professional or in a personal manner, compared to the US, for example. So for me, that was quite an experience, kind of adjusting myself and my own thinking and the way I talk about myself, and whether that is from a professional standpoint or for what else I do and what I love, etc. I find myself talking about it in a completely different way than I used to many months and years ago, simply because I've been exposed to different types of cultures. And don't get me wrong, there's a benefit and a flip side to everything. But I do agree, there is almost an art to it, the way you talk about yourself without annoying people or coming across as arrogant, pretentious, and all of that. It kind of comes down to tone, body language, but also the type of words I'm using. So when I turn to be very passionate about things and I put more the solutions or the way I make my clients feel into the forefront of the way I talk about my own business, that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable rather than just saying, oh, I did this.
Not too long ago, I was talking to a friend about what I do, and she said to me, you just talk to people. Anybody can do that. And I was, first of all, very offended. Like, really? Really? That's where we're going to go. But then I immediately felt like, well, now I have to defend myself. And I was like, no, that's not going to be a thing either. And I finally just let it go. And I realized she's not a client. She's never going to talk to anybody who's a client. She's not going to refer people to me. It really doesn't matter if she understands, because, and I say this out loud on a regular basis, I have one of those resumes or CVs that is intimidating if it's not mine. I get to own that. I get to have a list of credentials that I could just trot out and be like, you want pretentious? Here you go. But I don't have to. If someone wants to understand what I do, they're going to talk to me and they're going to have an interesting conversation. And if they don't want to understand, then I don't have to try and explain it.
I use case studies a lot so that it doesn't become about me, where I'll say, hey, I had a client in that similar scenario. Everything wasn't exact, but then I'll go into the conversation, because then it takes away from me, I. It becomes about this other example that people are more open to, because I too will slam you with my credentials. And I realize that really doesn't work, because when people slam me with their credentials, I immediately am like, shut up. So I kind of realized slamming somebody with my credentials has never changed their mindset. And it's hard, because I want to slam people with my credentials and say, like, what the hell do you even know? Talking to people is one of the hardest things on earth to do. And if we were all good at talking to people, we wouldn't have the society we have.
Brandon, what do you think now?
So I have two thoughts. First one, I guess, will be the stressful work. I have friends that work in construction and in those sorts of fields. I remember one time saying, I'm really stressed out. I'm trying to design this sales strategy for this organization. They're like, what kind of stress is that? Like, you're not working. Like, that's, and I'm like, okay, you just simply don't get it. So there was that. And then you mentioned earlier that this is typically an issue that women would have and not generally men. And I was thinking about, like, okay, well, my friend she's female that came over. And so she came to me with that whole, I feel pretentious, but I feel the same way. And I was thinking back to some of the interactions I've had here in Portland and the way men have introduced themselves in their jobs. And it's always immediately, this is my title, this is how much money I make. And it was so weird to me, because it's like, I don't care about any of those things.
But you know what? It's not just a female thing, because I have lots of clients who are super successful. I just had one yesterday I was having a conversation with, and I had to outline, like, this is how you talk about yourself. You need to share that information. Stop hiding your talents. Like, nobody can, he's looking for a job. I'm like, nobody's going to give you a job if you hide your talents and are just like, hey, I need a job. Like, that's not how that works.
My male friends, the same thing. They're, this is like the one who's looking for a job, and he's afraid to put in all the great things he does. He's like, well, I'm kind of bragging here, and I don't want to come across like that kind of person. I'm like, this is when you need to brag.
Yeah.
If you don't toot your own horn, no one's going to let you play in the band.
When you toot your horn, it might not be so good, and maybe you shouldn't be in the band. And that's probably part of it, is we're so used to people who really do have the credentials or are so hyperbolic about their storytelling. It turns something that should have been good into something that's a negative.
So hence why for me, it's all about the way you phrase it. If you just rattle down well, these are my credentials and this is what I do and this is how great I am and I have done this great project and I have created these kind of great outcomes. And if you go on and you just keep brushing your own ego and boosting your own ego, then yeah, people not just only glaze over, but they form a certain opinion about yourself. Absolutely, you need to brag about yourself, in particular when it's about winning a project, when it's about going for a deal, job interview. Certain things need to be in there because you want to stand out. So those things need to be in there. But again, it depends for me highly how you tell the story. Karen, to your point, tell the story, tell it from a client's perspective. Use kind of case studies, the wins you've made for your client. I think that's then becoming a lot more interesting, and people are then interested in listening to it because you start telling a story rather than saying, I'm so great at project management and I have 100 people under me and I make so much money and yada, yada, yada.
I think in the end, it's about being a human being. And some people aren't going to like you. Like when I say that I'm a mental MacGyver, some people are like, oh my God, that's so great. And other people are like, that's so obnoxious. I don't know why you use that.
Dr. Startup.
Right?
Totally.
Exactly. Dr. Startup's the same thing. Like sometimes you just have to say some people are going to be annoyed. Like the quick hits we did recently, what Tim Hawk's idea is, just because you can't please everybody every time doesn't mean you can't try. I don't have to try.
Takes a while to get to that point though.
So I think what we've come to is, how do you talk about yourself without being pretentious? We're talking about share examples, talk about what you've done, not kind of your credentials, and maybe use a little bit of humor. And then if people just don't like it, well, then that's okay. And my friend who thinks that talking to people is easy, all right, you know what? Fine. No worries. Thank you for doing this with me. That's our 10 minutes. I look forward to speaking to each of you again really soon.